started to implement the roadmap is that it's taken a bit of an evolution, that tech is no longer really kind of the driver of it. But it's really about shifting to making an overarching principle, similar to how you're seeing sustainability referenced within cities or resiliency, that it's something, a lens that everybody should be looking through. So what we kind of see the definition now more resembling is that a city becomes smart when it fosters economic growth and improves the quality of life for all of its citizens by efficiently managing existing resources and promoting participation in our government and our efforts. And relying on data and information as a key source of knowledge. So that's kind of where we're coming from within the city when we talk smart city. The way the city is responding to some of these issues that the pandemic has amplified is we're largely focused on responding to some of to this crisis, right? We're doing a lot from our health department, from OIT. We have been busy. I mean, my colleagues are amazing at the way that they've been able to pivot and respond to these challenges, largely supporting work from home efforts. So taking 20,000 employees and facilitating their ability to work from home has been a huge effort. It's been a team effort. We're pulling people from different departments to work on this, including mine. And then we're also doing a massive amount of data collection. I was really excited to see a dashboard that our city geo team developed for hospitals to utilize, as well as to coordinate with our emergency operations center, which we helped set up. And it's such a great dashboard that it was able to be shared with the counties in the region so that they didn't have to develop it. So we could just share it and quickly focus on resources that we have, where are we lacking and whatnot. So that's been kind of our current approach, where I think we're slowly pivoting to looking at what is the new normal and what does that mean. But in the meantime, we're also still moving forward key initiatives. So there might be some people online that are aware of our streetlight RFQ that we issued, where we're looking to update our fixtures and transition them to LED fixtures. That's still moving forward. It's still a very important effort in the city. Not only because it allows us to have energy savings, so we want to be more efficient, right, as we have a drastic budget cut coming our way, but also it's really a backbone to some of our smart city efforts. So thinking through what are the technologies that we want to add on to our street lights. And then I would say from the smart city space, we're really looking at how can we be strategic about how we move forward. So how can we be better prepared for situations like this in the future? I think this is a test run for climate change and some of the impacts that climate change might have on our communities. So from an economic lens, how are we looking at being more resilient economically? Can we create more regional supply chains, because that's something that's been affected by this pandemic? And how can we look through a circular lens to support that and create jobs at the same time? You know, I live in a townhome, or a row house rather, where I have very little backyard and 2 young small children. The urban space right now is really interesting to me because I take them for walks a lot, and I'm on sidewalks that are 3 feet wide and very hard to pass people in a socially distant, responsible way. So how is the urban space being utilized and looked at moving forward? How is the city going to start thinking about how do we adapt our urban space so that we can support these behaviors, but also provide more effective urban space to individuals who need it? And then one of the biggest things that the pandemic has really amplified is the digital divide. And that's why I'm so happy we have Juliet on our team to help address it, because it's huge and it has such a ripple effect. It's not only about kids having access to internet and technology, but it's also about adults and people who need to look for jobs and whatnot. And then the last thing, and I'll stop talking, is the lens that I'm looking through in terms of how I move forward smart city technology is that it needs to help us be more efficient and effective in our budgeting as well. So are there opportunities to save funds? Are there opportunities to create more detailed and precise budgets that allow us to have a better budgeting process? Those are the kind of things that we're working on right now.
Got it. Well, and before I want to get into the spaces conversation, but you joined, I believe, in October of last year, so you're still relatively, I don't want to say new, but you're a few months in. But when I first met, What's that?
I'm still claiming that I'm new.
Well, one of the things that, in our first conversation when I met you, I don't remember how long ago that was, a couple months ago, you talked about the circular economy and how that's a passion of yours. So just like smart cities, can you define that term for us and give a little bit of background about what that means exactly?
Sure. I'm going to give a light definition, and I'm going to let Eva do more of the heavy lifting on that definition because she is the expert. I'm just the generalist. But very simply put, I would say that the definition of circular economy is moving from a traditional economic model of make, use, and waste and closing that loop and looking for resources and efficiencies within that loop. So how can you keep resources operating at their highest value for as long as possible rather than just throwing them away? And there are ways to look at this system. It doesn't only apply to physical waste, and I think that's an important thing to emphasize. It's often seen in its application to waste, but it can be applied to energy systems, water systems, and it's a great paradigm to explore because it creates new economic revenue streams. It creates job opportunities, not only for innovators and entrepreneurs, but for hard to employ or underskilled individuals as well. So there's a wide spectrum of opportunity to create new jobs in a circular economy.
And I believe Metabolic is part of the pitch and pilot program for the city. Is that right?
That is right. So I was remiss in mentioning kind of our Smart City PHL roadmap. I mentioned it briefly. We launched it in 2019. Since I've come on board in October, we've been focusing on kind of two implementation components of it. The first is establishing a governance mechanism. So really setting up our advisory committees, our working groups, and getting that functioning so that it's a clearer communication between the groups, but also really supportive of quickly and efficiently moving forward implementation. The other part of the Smart City PHL roadmap that we've launched is the Pitch and Pilot program, which has two components to it. The first component is looking at ways to create sustained engagement with universities to help drive innovation in the city. We've partnered as a city with different universities in the region, but it's always kind of been one-offs, and we want to have a sustained relationship with them where we are R&D partners, and Philly is a living lab for their experimentation and piloting of projects. So that's one component of it. And the second component is issuing challenges, urban governmental challenges to the community and asking them to apply with a technology solution. And then we select one utilizing our working group, and we move it forward into a pilot and hopefully scale it up within the city. The important part of that is that we ensure that it's equitable and inclusive. So we want to make sure that our solutions are not just for certain areas of the city, but that everybody in the city can benefit from it. And it's a really great mechanism for the city to create partnerships with private sector organizations. Our first pitch and pilot was focused on waste and supporting the city's goal to be zero waste by 2035. And we ended up having a little bit extra money in our budget and selecting two winners of that waste challenge. The first one was Retriever, which is a waste collection company where you can schedule a pickup of either textile or e-waste via an app. They'll come to your house and pick it up with no contact. So it's perfect for right now when we're all at home cleaning out our houses and our closets and we don't know what to do with those materials. We don't want to leave the house to take them to the appropriate places. Retriever will come and pick them up for you. We're looking to launch that in the next few weeks. So hopefully everybody will take advantage of that. We'd love it if you donate your e-waste too, because we're using them to help connect to our digital divide challenge. And then the other winner was Metabolic, which we were also really excited to partner with. They're developing an urban mining tool, which is essentially looking and mapping our construction and demolition waste stream, which is a huge part of our waste stream in Philadelphia. And they're matching valuable resources with circular opportunities, as well as working to mitigate the environmental impact of that whole process.
Yeah. Well, and for anybody on this call, I'd encourage you to check out Metabolic's website. I tooled around there yesterday in terms of the data they're collecting and what it enables, and it's pretty impressive. So with that, Mariela, as social distancing becomes the norm, what does it mean for public spaces and the use of those public spaces?
Yeah, so super fascinating, Emily, all the different hats you're wearing. It's pretty impressive, especially right now. So yeah, thanks for that question. I think the first thing I'd like us to kind of broaden out is this idea of public space and think about it more as the public realm. Because then that really helps us to understand just the implications of COVID or beyond just our public spaces, but just everything from built environment. Or urban design, which is sort of my area of focus. And then also add on a framework of how urban design influences your behavior. So my background, I have a PhD in urban planning, but focused on a framework of environmental psychology. So everything I've looked at is with this understanding that the built environment influences behavior, and that us as our humans, our behaviors were meant to also be able to adapt the built environment to facilitate certain things that we want to do. And through that relationship, through that bidirectional relationship, we can extract value. We can extract value from an economic perspective, from a social perspective, environmental and health perspective. And currently, right now, that relationship between urban design has been interrupted by COVID. We can't really interact with urban design in the right ways. But more so, we haven't really built in the ability to have a more flexible response. So for the longest time, we haven't really had the ability to really shape our built environment in the way that we want to for certain types of behaviors. And we've been remiss in that, and mostly because we've implemented a kind of top-down process where we've over-designed places for a specific use, and then now we're left with uses that we can't actually do right now with respect to social distancing. So it's really important to kind of think through that framework when thinking about, okay, what do we do now? How do we adapt our built environment in ways that can actually facilitate safer social distancing? And that response has to be fast, quick, nimble, things like tactical urbanism, where we are opening up our streets, quickly expanding out the sidewalks by taking the cars off the road, so that we can do what we need to do now. But we also have to think about this from a mitigation standpoint. Down the road, we have to integrate a measured approach, a data-driven approach, an evidence-based approach that goes back to this understanding of that we already know, at least people in my field know, about the links between urban design, behavior, and value. And this is really where data comes to play, because we already know that urban design and behavior, that relationship has been not really inclusive or equitable, meaning that you really have to have access to good urban design. Having good urban design throughout the city isn't enough. And so if you lack access to urban design, like many vulnerable communities do, then they're already more prone to health outcomes that we now hear about as comorbidities that have then put them more at risk for hospitalization and ultimate vitality with respect to COVID. So that there's been this pre-existing relationship that needs to be addressed, and a lot of that has to do with equity and inclusion that existed pre-COVID. But now during COVID, that whole relationship is exacerbated again, even the transmission rates and how effectively we're able to socially distance. Somebody who has access to good urban design, good public realm, can much more effectively socially distance than someone who can't. So either they're putting themselves at higher risk because they have to, or they're not going outside, but then having other mental health implications. So that all relates back to that transmission rate as well. So post-COVID and now during COVID, that relationship already existed. We know how to address it. We need to have higher, more inclusive, equitable places, and knowing that. Using a more data-driven, evidence-based approach to understand what that relationship is throughout the city, and highlighting and prioritizing certain neighborhoods and certain communities is really an important way forward, and what we're hoping to work on with Emily through the City of Philadelphia.
Yeah. Well, and I'm very excited about that, and I think hopefully we'll come back to that a little further in the conversation. But I think that the question becomes, can we really be a smart city if all our citizens don't have access to technology and know how to use it? So just like the built environment, we have challenges in the virtual and digital realm. Juliet, can you share with us how technology and data can help us adopt a SDG, that being the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has outlined, to move towards a more resilient, more equitable future for Philadelphia?
Sure. So I think that the sort of digital divide or digital equity work that we need to do, this is an issue that we've known about for a long time, but has been clearly amplified by this epidemic, where folks need to stay home, and where once they stay home, you have rising issues around folks getting access. So the school district of Philadelphia rapidly deployed almost 130,000 Chromebooks to its students in about 2.5 weeks, although there are still some challenges there. They have been working with the telecoms to get students connected. But the fundamental issue that we have in Philadelphia is that, based on the 2018 census data, about 20% of households still don't have any sort of broadband access. That includes any smartphone access. An additional 12% only have smartphone access, which, in a time when we are required to do more and more activities, from telehealth to schoolwork, is inadequate for the needs of most people. So the disparities are huge in Philadelphia, and they map the disparities in many of the other areas in which Philadelphia has challenges. To create a really true digital equity among Philadelphia, I think we have to think beyond. We have to do a number of things. We have to think about how we can reduce barriers in many, many ways. So fundamentally, we have to remove the cost barrier. We have to figure out where that is and how we can remove it. We have to think about how, as a smart city, we can increase speeds for everyone, not just some communities, but how we can increase speeds so that everybody can take full advantage of this amazing resource that is the internet and use it to its full potential. But even if we were to do that, we still need to be thinking about things like a project that we're launching right now called Digital Navigators, which is something that we're working with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance on. And the concept is really to, sort of like a health navigator, to have individuals working remotely with community members to help them identify what their internet options are, help them complete forms. We have a literacy rate where 22% of the population in Philadelphia lacks basic literacy skills, so they need extensive support and even signing up for any sort of benefits that the digital navigators can provide them, as well as helping folks get access to devices, which are in huge need right now. Still about 12% of the population in Philadelphia does not have access to any sort of computer or device with which to connect to the internet. And I have lots of refurbishers out there who are willing to provide them, but no product, because we can't get into businesses right now to get bulk computers into the hands of refurbishers to wipe and make sure that they are able to do to refurbish them safely, which is why we're also really excited about the work that Emily's doing with Retriever, because that could help some of that backlog. But we need to, and then we need to really think about how we scale up digital literacy in conjunction with literacy. It's a key component in digital equity. We need to think about tech support for the community and how folks, it doesn't matter if they have a computer or they have the internet, but if something breaks and they can't fix it, we need to figure out how they can fix their equipment so they can access it. And then finally, we really need to think about English language learners, people with disabilities. When we talk about true equity, we're really talking about a whole range of things that we need to think about how to solve. And that's exciting work that we are trying to do in the city. We're talking with a number of groups around how to roll some initiatives out, particularly this digital navigator initiative, and how to do it smartly.
Thanks, Juliet. Eva, Philadelphia prides itself on being tough and gritty, so we work hard. We're here talking about how to be smart and resilient. The definition of resiliency is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And I find myself thinking, going back to the point Emily made earlier, that COVID is, sort of a dry run for climate change. A lot of the same issues and the people affected and the problems that are rearing themselves now are essentially waiting for us as soon as we exit this pandemic with the climate change crisis that, the slow emergency. So can you share with us how we leverage technology and the data to transition to more of a circular state and the work that you do and how that applies for us to facilitate economic resiliency, essentially?
Yeah, it's a great question. Related to that point, I saw this great cartoon circulating where the kind of like COVID curve and the flattened curve were shown on a plane, and there's two scientists looking at that and saying, I can't wait until this is over. And behind them, there's this massive tidal wave looming, and that's climate change. But it's not just climate change that we're facing. There are a number of different environmental tipping points that we're crossing, everything from biodiversity loss to nutrient cycles. And it is definitely the case that we cannot have a resilient economy that is not a sustainable economy. We actually have to bring our operations within planetary boundaries. Otherwise, we'll continuously face these different types of tipping points and crises. And in fact, the pandemic was not even something to be unexpected, not something unexpected, let's say. There's an annual risk and resilience map that's published by the World Economic Forum, and pandemics are always listed there. And so this is it is a wake-up call in lots of ways about how we have to start looking at the design of our systems very differently. Now, one of the things that's been brought up a lot around resilience, economic resilience in particular, is that we have gone into a very centralized mode of operation. We have a very globalized economy, which is very efficient with a lot of specialization and a lot of geographic specialization as well for where certain things are taking place. And in the start of the pandemic, there was a lot of discussion about how we suddenly couldn't get pharmaceuticals because all those supply chains were in China. And there were reports of 70% of companies not being able to get the resources that they needed, at least some form of supply chain disruption. Now, as we move toward a more sustainable circular economy, cities, which are currently nodes in this very centralized, efficient system, have to start playing a different role. And efficiency actually has lots of trade-offs with resilience. As you make a system more efficient and streamlined, you often make it less resilient because you're removing buffers, you're removing duplications and things that actually fix some of these problems. Now, cities are currently these consumer nodes in this very efficient global economy where all these resources come and get funneled into those cities and generally get turned into waste. And we actually need to make cities into producers. We need to build bottom-up new value chains within cities that actually start to bring new types of jobs to communities. And this starts to turn cities into resilience hubs. So there are a lot of different technologies that can be leveraged for this. One of the things that we're doing with the city of Philadelphia, as Emily already mentioned, is this urban mining tool deployment, where we're looking at, so we developed this model where you can actually predict all the different resources that are going to become available in the built environment through different demolition projects, and then map that and match it to new construction projects. There are all sorts of ways of doing that for other resource and value chains within cities. And I think going back to what Mariela was saying around urban design and development, there are all sorts of things that we need to do in terms of designing cities of the future. I think we have to avoid the tendency to be super reactive at this moment and just design in response to the pandemic, but rather envision what is the kind of economy and city that we want in the future that also accounts for issues like potential health crises and pandemics, and how do you design public transport systems, waste processing and collection systems, local communities, urban spaces that adapt to all of those needs at once. And that is that is a huge opportunity that we have right now, because there is all this investment, there is a kind of openness to new ways of thinking. So instead of just reacting and blindly solving one problem, let's address multiple challenges simultaneously as we move forward.
Yeah, and I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania originally, coal country, and I've been for a while now thinking about our economy in terms of, coal. They left columns of coal as they mined the coal, and as they got further into the vein, they got more expensive. They did strip mining, so taking the easy coal that was left, as you talked about buffer, they left these columns, but then, they took a shortcut and they removed some of that buffer to, increase their profits, and, ultimately led to coal mine cave-ins. So as I think about as you explain that with resiliency and efficiency and, the buffer needed, the coal mine and strip mining analogy is, what came to mind for me. Sorry. Yeah. So I always like to focus on sort of action, and we have quite a few people on this call. I think we've got well over 100. So, in terms of actionability beyond, hoping the city does what's needed beyond voting and reaching out to our elected officials, kind of open this up to the whole panel, thoughts and suggestions about what the people on this phone call, as consumers, as employees, as investors, we all have, 401ks and investments, private, et cetera. We may represent boards that have endowments and foundations. What action, we all have sort of our tool belt of things we can do. Thoughts and suggestions about how we as citizens, consumers, investors, representatives can take action?
I can take the first stab at this. For me, I think it is thinking of the city as a partner, coming to us with really exciting. Just got really busy. Exciting and innovative ideas that can help everyone in the city. We want to be there and help you do R&D. We want the right-of-ways to be places where you test out your technologies or the city itself, and come to us, let us know your ideas. We will do our best to work with you. We want to support innovation. We want to drive partnerships. We want to be connectors. So that would be, an ask of us is we're a small team, but we really can get a lot of stuff done. So we'd love to work with people who are interested in helping improve the city.
And maybe to build on that a little bit, I think this is a really interesting moment for collaborations to emerge between municipal government and private sector investors. One of the things that we've been exploring and thinking about are new financing models for how to route some of the financial resources that are becoming available into kind of the new economy that we need to build. And one of the ideas that we've been playing around with is something called a circular impact bond. So most of you probably have heard of social impact bonds. And the idea is that cities are willing to, let's say, already pay for certain types of social goods and services and already have budgets for this, but often not large enough budgets to actually accomplish the outcomes that are being, that you're aiming for. So if you can create a conditional pool of money that becomes payable to investors only when a certain impact is achieved. So for example, when you hit a certain recycling rate, when you hit a certain increase in literacy, et cetera, then you can actually attract more capital and magnify the amount of resources that are going to that particular in that direction. And I think it's an important time to, let's say, envision, as I was saying, just let's take as an example, mobility, urban mobility. So there's been a lot of talk about how people are concerned that now with all these safety issues and social distancing, that public transport is going to become disused and people are going to go back to using private vehicles. Now, there are definitely solutions that involve creating kind of shared public transport systems that are also sanitary. And there's lots of different ways that you can envision this, like self-sanitizing electric pods that are available on demand or things like that. And these are actually much better mobility solutions for the future and can be designed in a much better way than what we have now. So we can leapfrog some of the challenges that we have now and put in resources to solving these problems. But I think that it requires also a bit of space or leadership from the city to say, okay, well, we are going to create these visions or challenges and then try to bring together different types of stakeholders and actors to pull together capital and effort in actually realizing those.
Yeah, I would say that there's kind of three areas of action that different stakeholders could partake in. I mean, one is from the design perspective, and that's, I mentioned earlier that we're trying to work with the city of Philadelphia, with Emily, on utilizing State of Place's new automated data collection capacity. So we collect data on almost 300 aspects of urban design, whether there's trees, sidewalks, benches, public spaces, the number of vehicle lanes and things like that, to then deploy that throughout the entire city so that we can begin to understand, okay, what does that actually look like, that relationship that I mapped out earlier? What does that look like? What did that look like with COVID? What does that look like with other underlying issues of disequities that already existed, and become and create a more targeted response? So that's kind of a technological response, but that brings us to the second issue of policy and funding, because for on both those fronts, both us as these small kind of startup companies, but also cities in this regard to being able to access new technologies and new data, there is a need for more funding and policy friendly approaches that make it easier for companies like myself and cities to work together, because there's quite a bit of barriers within that. So really focusing on the policy side of things. And then the third is more of an empathy, call to empathy, where we think through this as more of a community-led approach. Begin to work within your communities, begin to build trust with those communities. Yes, have them come to you, have them come to the city, but we need to and sometimes go to them, as we know with the other aspects we were talking about with the digital divide and equity implications therein. We do need to be the ones to go to them and build those trust and make that first step. And I think if we use that empathy frame throughout all of our different solutions, we'll really begin to take the right first step.
Great.
So I'm obviously focused on a very particular piece of this, but what I would say is that I also come from the world of HIV activism, another epidemic that has been a major issue across the globe. And I like to tell a story where in the late 90s, a bunch of Philly ACT UP activists were sitting together in a bar and essentially came up with the concept of the Global Fund for AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, right? And they had enough access and connections and were well known in the activist community and nationally and globally to actually push this forward and make it a reality. Digital equity, I feel like, is, and particularly the access issue, is something that is totally solvable. Like, we can solve this issue. It does require resources. It requires more resources than we currently have. And in the absence of federal subsidization or state subsidies, I think that there is an opportunity for the community and government, for companies to come together and really think about how we can create a city that doesn't just provide access, but provides what we need to really move forward as a smart city, right? And those are all those things that I had mentioned earlier. I think that there is, in this new normal, there is an opportunity here to really solve this problem. And it's really exciting right now, and people in the communities are demanding it and really, really need it. And so I think that there is, in crisis, there are opportunities, and this is a clear one.
I'm going to
make our city overall better.
I'm going to put out another call. All of ours are kind of really big. I would say, like, we're going to solve all the world's problems, but a very immediate one that if people want to have an immediate impact is we need computers. So if you have an extra computer laying around your house, or you work for a company that's throwing away or kind of going through a transition of your technology, contact Juliet or myself, and we will get that from you somehow and get it to the refurbishers. But that's a very immediate need that we need help with, and very tangible, that anybody who has extra, computers laying around their house or laptops, we would like. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there as another thing.
Emily, what's the easiest way for them to follow through on
that? My email is emily.yates@phila.gov.
Okay, great.
Juliet, you want to share your email?
I have a bunch of extra computers at our office, Emily. I wish I could ship them to you, but I think it's going to be a little bit challenging. But that is interesting. I wonder if do you have like good communication channels with your citizenry? Do you feel, because I feel like sometimes there are these simple things that people could really take action on, but there isn't like a forum or something like that for people to go to online. And I also think now there's a lot of really innovative tooling that's popping up that I think cities could really learn from one another in terms of what they're doing. Like this morning I saw a really interesting tool that mapped out, someone did this GIS analysis of Amsterdam actually, and showed in red and blue and yellow lines where it was possible to cross easily with social distancing based on sidewalk widths and where it wasn't. And I think that kind of same algorithm could really easily be applied, let's say, to Philadelphia or to any other city. And then that can also be used as an input for city leaders to figure out, okay, well, what measures do we need to take where to really relieve like bottlenecks or congestion? Or also, Mariela, like you were talking about, repurposing urban space in this particular time, like what can we do with spaces that are now getting underutilized because they were designed for other functions. Anyway, it's just, there's some thoughts about also communicating between like lessons learned. I think that it would be great to have like a kind of forum where things could be posted and shared quickly, because we need to.
Agreed. I mean, I think that's one of the, I look to Amsterdam as kind of a leader in the smart city space, and they have their smart city website allows for people to post and kind of share concepts and ideas and projects. And I think that that's a really interesting tool for communication, something I'd love to emulate. It's on my list, my ever-growing list of things that we'd love to accomplish here. That would be good tools for engaging the community in what we're trying to accomplish as a smart city. So that's good.
Yeah, and Ava, that's exactly what we're trying to do, is map out the urban assets of neighborhoods and cities. I mean, and that's what we've been doing at State of Place for years. It's just that we were kind of limited in terms of our data collection capacity because of how we were doing our data. It was all just trained human raters on Google Street View, and that's what I mentioned. Like, we just automated this process in the midst of COVID, and so we can, like, but most cities don't know. Most cities don't have an inventory like of where their even sidewalks are, no less how wide they are, and all the other aspects of urban design that come into play. with this pandemic. So that's really the goal of mapping this all out, so we can just get a sense of what's there, what needs to be changed, and exactly what you said around, yes, there's certain, we can't be too reactive. Let's do things that are obvious now, but then take a step back, use a data-driven approach. How do we make cities more resilient moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Mariela and I had a great conversation yesterday with Parks and Rec about this tool that we're looking to develop. And I think a key part of what the work is going to be on the smart city side too is educating people about how to use that data, right? So we'll have this amazing tool that tells us about the quality of our public space and urban design and where we have assets and whatnot. But how does our health department then take that data and make informed decisions about how they're managing pandemics or dealing with air quality issues? How does our planning department take that data and use it to inform approval of various PUDs and developments? How do our street departments take it and better coordinate when they're closing down streets and kind of updating and whatnot? So I think that's another key part of the smart city strategy that we're focusing on.
So I'm going to jump in because there's a couple of questions that have come in, and I'm going to combine a few of them and then just, again, open it up. But, Jeremy Nowak and Bruce Katz wrote a book called The New Localism. I sum it up as saying the white knight from DC isn't going to come in and save a lot of our problems, encouraging local communities and investors and businesses to align resources. We talk about two-pocket capitalism. I make money with my left hand, I do good with my right. And, with ImpactPHL, we try to encourage one-pocket capitalism. How do we do both and align our resources? So a couple of different questions I'm just going to kind of throw out. One is, can we do this in the new economic reality? Sort of any comments on that? What stands in our way of getting there? Again, collectively as citizens, as business owners, as investors. And then what stakeholders do we need in the room to create these approaches or this approach, that really requires an all hands on deck? So feel free to respond to any and all of that.
What I think the major thing standing in all of our way right now is that we're locked up in our houses and that we're literally prevented from performing normal activities. And those of us who aren't in our houses are under threat and doing risky work for the sake of the rest of us. And that is something that we need to really have a very thorough set of solutions for. And I do think that there needs to be a much better globally coordinated response, which we haven't been seeing. There hasn't really been good enough leadership across the board to come up with plans that really move us toward this kind of pathway. But I do think that there are solutions. And in terms of whether this is actually even possible in the new economy, I very much think it is. So actually moving toward a circular economy allows us to get more out of every single resource. It means that for every piece of material that we've put into the economy, we can get up to 10 times or even 100 times as much value out of it. And so in lots of ways, it's actually much more affordable and financially sensible. So this is definitely very much possible, economically speaking. It just requires upfront investment. And right now, we need to make sure that we're investing in that kind of future in the long term, instead of in propping up old industries that maybe shouldn't even exist in some cases. So this is the kind of debate that I think we have to have now. And I think that it's a mental barrier a lot of the time, because people feel more comfortable saying, okay, let's go back to the way it was, because we would just want everything to be normal. But there's also been some great cartoons out there showing the past and the present, and then, instead of going back, why don't we go forward? But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to build off of that, Eva, it's funny how there's so much parallel between sort of the idea of the circular economy and what I've been advocating for 20 years around walkability, because a walkable, livable neighborhood city it's not just good because people can walk to places. I mean, there are exponential benefits of that. There's economic benefits, which I've focused on quantifying. There's social, there's environmental, there's health, and these are all the things that I mentioned in the beginning. And yet it's actually a really parsimonious idea, let's just fix our streets. And it has all of these exponential benefits, but what's standing in the way? Well, kind of what you said, the communication around that. People tend to think in silos, and they don't, it's oh, that's just an urban design thing, and it's been such a struggle to convince people to invest in something like this. Because it just doesn't rise to the level of high priority in their mind. And yet we know that these things all come down to, matter of life and death in many ways. It impacts the likelihood of vehicle collisions and how many people are we losing a day, well, not now with COVID, but prior to COVID, with accidents. I mean, we've definitely same or more definitely than we've lost with COVID, and not to minimize what's happening of course of COVID, but all this goes back to urban design. When you talk about all of the comorbidities that we mentioned earlier, that's been a silent killer. Again, exponentially more so. And all of so much of this ties back to the built environment. So how do we begin to break out of those silos, realize that all of these things are related, they're circular, it's all systems thinking, and get people to work together in a more transdisciplinary way. And that's what, at least I've been trying to work toward that end, just from a very data geeky perspective of quantifying all this value that the built environment helps us derive.
I would echo everything Eva and Mariela said. From the city perspective, I think we need to be more innovative in how we do things and stop kind of falling back on what we know, but really saying, okay, this is something that's important and benefits our community. How can we think innovatively about procuring it, about executing on it, and about scaling it up? It's a challenge that we're constantly trying to navigate. I'm so lucky to have another amazing female on my team, Eliza Pollock, who does innovation consulting and really helps different departments think through these challenges and roadblocks that they encounter. Kind of how can we think more creatively about what we're doing? Collaboration. This cannot be done in silos. So just to echo that and emphasize it. And then also, as a city, I don't think it's unknown to anybody, we operate from a risk perspective, right? We're always kind of concerned about the risks that this might bring to the city. And I think we've already seen that that perspective doesn't always work well for us in the long run. And when we encounter things like the pandemic that we're going through right now, there's a value to it at certain points, but I also think we have to be willing to try things and fail and be okay with brushing off our shirts and saying, okay, that didn't work. What didn't work? How can we change it moving forward? Is it still getting us to the end result that we want, which is improved quality of life for all citizens of Philadelphia? And I think that that's kind of a new mindset that we have to have moving forward in order to be able to accomplish things like this that are novel to Philadelphia, but not novel to cities throughout the world.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just add, as many of you probably are aware, that the stock market has already sort of recovered from, the corona situation. And to me, there's a macro and there's a micro. The stock market is mostly owned by the wealthy, statistically. So that means that the wealth of this country and the stock market represents some of the largest companies. So there's confidence in that, while Main Street and the micro is really worried and scared. And so I think, just as for anybody on this call, think local. Again, it's about a lot of this stuff kind of goes back to efficiency, is thinking long and hard about, where we spend our money, where we invest our money, and what that means for Philadelphia. Amazon's made it scarily easy to order from them. I have to fight the urge to sort of go there first. But at the end of the day, Amazon doesn't care that much about Philadelphia. So I think that's sort of going back to the smart city, resilient city, is in a lot of these cases, we are a large economy. And so as we align the choices we make with what's best for us, is really just revisiting, kind of to echo all of the comments that were made already, revisit all of our decisions and think, is this the smart thing to do for the Philadelphia region and all of its residents? So,
Cory, I think just to echo one of the things that you just said, I think one of the most important things that all of us can do, every single one of us, is indeed spend our money as much as possible with, give it to local businesses, buy from local farmers and co-ops. I mean, that is one of the kind of most important things that we can do right now, is to redistribute that wealth to our communities and the people who need it the most. And that's something that we can do every day, since we still have to eat and buy books, I guess, now, and all sorts of other things.
Yeah. Co-ops and employee-owned companies, more of that wealth trickles down to the folks who work for those kinds of organizations. So yeah, those are generally smart decisions. Jesse, do we have any other questions that have come in?
Yeah, I think we have about 4 minutes left. So I think there's one question that I think we can touch upon a bit. So I know a few of you talked about being not being reactive, and how this is really a great opportunity to really shape our cities and communities. So one question that came in is, how do we limit what we're putting in landfills or decrease carbon emissions? So rather than tackling it from the latter end, how do we just limit what we're doing and putting into the system? Anyone have thoughts on that?
Yeah, maybe just really quickly, that's one of the core things around the circular economy, is that it's not really meant to be an end of pipe solution where we're just figuring out what to do with the waste and with the emissions and fixing it after we've already caused the problem. It's really about redesigning products, redesigning the way we build buildings, the way we create neighborhoods, so that you're fundamentally reducing the footprint and the amount of material that's going into the system. And that is also what I would encourage as we're looking to invest in new companies and new solutions, to really put these types of criteria on that, to say, like, it has to actually be circular by design or sustainable by design. One of the things that I've heard a lot there's been all this critique of like, okay, well, we're projected to have a 5% reduction in carbon emissions this year, but look at the cost of that. Look at what that means in terms of no flights, everything being shut down, et cetera. And I think that is a really dangerous comparison to draw, because the way that things are being shut down now is not how we need to decarbonize. We are not supposed to decarbonize by shutting down entire industries. We're supposed to decarbonize by increasing the efficiency, by changing the design of different subsectors, and really making things fundamentally circular. So I think that that's kind of the way I would think about it.
All right, well, we've got, I want to make sure we end on time so that everybody can get to their next session. We have minute or two left. Any final comments before we sign off from any of the panelists?
I'm really excited to see what Philadelphia does with Mariela's company, and I think you guys are doing awesome stuff. And so, yeah, I don't know, more power to you.
Same to you. I've been a fan for a really long time, so I'm excited that you're already working with Emily. So,
well, I'm excited. I'm working with all of these folks. I will just say I am thrilled to be in Philadelphia. I'm glad I had the opportunity to join this team at OIT. I moved here from Charlotte, North Carolina, and just have loved kind of being in Philadelphia, being embraced by Philadelphians. I think there's a lot of opportunity that the city has in front of it, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And I hope that everybody who's listening, floods my inbox with emails now that I've provided you guys with my email address about opportunities to collaborate, partner, provide e-waste to us. It requires partnerships, and we we would love for all of you guys to engage with us. So thank you for this opportunity. Its timing is perfect.
Okay, well, with that, I want to thank all the panelists for making time to be with us today and for sharing your knowledge and your work with us. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and attending. And then we have our just a couple of 2 o'clock sessions coming up, so we hope you'll stick with us and continue participating in the New Normal Forum. So thanks again.